Give him a hand.
So, thank you. I could talk for hours about my project AmicoPay and why I think it is so important for the future of scalable Bitcoin. But thankfully, thanks to the previous presentation, that saves me a lot of work, because in essence, AmicoPay aims to become an implementation of the Lightning Network. So the previous presentation should have given you a good view of the importance of this. Now, there's a little bit more to AmicoPay, because if you look to the basic design of the Lightning Network, such a network of payment channels, this is actually quite an old idea. There have been several variations of this, and the Lightning Network just happens to be the best so far. But you can imagine other designs. So what AmicoPay aims to do is it focuses on the nodes that do the routing of transactions, and so the focus is more on the routing. And the other big problem of AmicoPay, making the transaction channel, that is sort of delegated to plugins in AmicoPay. So for different types of channels, you can make different plugins, and this kind of design makes it possible to have different kinds of channels within the same network. And that opens up a couple of possibilities. One thing is these channels can be different in technology, so they can offer a different trade-off in security versus convenience. Another difference is they could actually be running on different blockchains. So that would make this network useful, for instance, for instant transfer of funds between sidechains. And well, when you talk about sidechains, it is still the same asset that you are trading. But imagine if different chains trade different assets, or different channels trade different assets. Then the nodes become a sort of an exchange function. Now this would make the nodes a lot more complicated. So for now, I'm not going to implement that in AmicoPay, but it's interesting to think of that possibility in the future, because it could give you decentralized exchanges. So in terms of channel types, what has been implemented for now is a Ripple-style IOU channel that is not a real microtransaction channel. It is just an object that fills in the place of a microtransaction channel and only does some bookkeeping of who owes what. And of course, this gives no protection, no security whatsoever. But for software testing, it is really useful, because it is trivial to implement this one. But I even think that in the future, this will continue to be useful, for instance, for links between nodes that can fully trust each other. And that could be, for instance, when several different nodes are run by the same organization, they can fully trust each other. Now, of course, the obvious thing that we need in the future is a true Lightning channel. And there are two approaches towards developing that. The Lightning developers themselves are developing it on a sidechain. That is because the Lightning channel design requires certain features in Bitcoin that are not yet present. So the Lightning developers work on a sidechain that has those new features. For AmicoPay, I chose a different approach. I don't want to depend on the Bitcoin developers to give me those new features. So what I did, I designed a different channel type that emulates these missing features with an escrow service. So now you sort of have to depend on the escrow service to correctly evaluate all the things that are not evaluated by a Bitcoin script. So that is not nearly as secure, but I wrote a paper about this. You can find it on the website. I think it is actually good enough for real-world usage. So these are a couple of different channel designs that could be useful. So finally, some issues and thoughts that I would like to share with you about this type of software. The design of this software turns out to be really complex in terms of everything is connected to everything else. You have a channel, and typically there are multiple transactions going on at once in a channel, and they all are related to the state of the channel. And the state of a transaction is also connected to another channel, so it also affects the state of that other channel, and it is hard to keep everything consistent. I think I've tackled that more or less now after a couple of attempts. The only remaining thing is that because of this complexity, there are a lot of open issues in the security of the software. So it's a long to-do list of solving security issues, and as soon as that the length of that list drops to 0, I think it is ready for a release of the software. Now, next thing, transaction malleability continues to be a problem. Even for that channel type that I designed, there is still a transaction malleability problem. So my message to the core developers of Bitcoin is, please solve the transaction malleability issue. That's really important. Another really important thing in the design of Amico Pay and the Lightning Network was already stressed in the previous presentation is the design of the routing. The details in the routing really matter for ensuring privacy of the users. And that's not just for the protection of these individual users, but also for the protection of the network as a whole. Because if you don't have privacy in this kind of network, you risk losing the open access property of the network. So it's really important to focus attention on this one. And the final thought is there are some economical things that need attention in the Lightning Network. In order to create a payment channel, you need to lock up some funds in the channel, and people need to be motivated to lock up their funds for a longer amount of time. So you need a sort of a return on investment probably from transaction fees, and well, there is some discussion going on the Lightning development mailing list on how to what would be right and what would be wrong on this. Personally, I am a bit skeptical about armchair economics, and I think just try it in practice and see what works and what doesn't work, what people will do. So what I hope is that Amico Pay will make this possible, and let's see how it goes.